And to make sure that's always kind of pushing forward in terms of better quality, better experience for every gent. Even if he's had great times before, let's make sure every time is perfect for him.
Welcome back to Muse on the Mic. I'm Riley.
And I'm Emily. Thanks again, guys, for joining us on another great episode of Muse on the Mic. A little introduction for anyone who might be new. Welcome to the channel. Riley and I are the owners of a spicy rub and tug, legal and licensed in Toronto, Canada. Technically, we're erotic entrepreneurs, and that is my favorite new expression.
Love that.
And we've owned our business for about 15 years now. So we have so much to talk about. We talk about all the ins and outs of the industry, sex, relationships, and everything in between. So welcome, everyone. We've got a great topic today. Riley, what are we talking about? Tell the people.
Today we're diving into refunds or unhappy customers. Do they get compensated or should they get compensated for naked services?
Listen, it's a delicate balance. It's a lot to juggle. And it's weird in this context because you're not just taking back a pair of shoes that might not feel comfy, you know? So
Right.
there's a lot of nuance. We're about to dive into it. I can't wait for this one. Where do you think we should start off? I'm thinking with complaints, kind
I,
of.
I mean, complaints come in. It happens. Sometimes it's right at front desk, or sometimes it's through
Mhm.
email later. And sometimes there are valid concerns, which takes us either speaking to the customer and the attendant to kind of,
Right.
figure out what happened, talk to both sides, see what the story is, and in which case we decide if we're going to compensate them. And I mean, at the end of the day, I think any business owner wants their customers to be happy. They're going to come back and spend again. So to compensate a customer should happen under the right circumstances, but there's always circumstances that I think people try to take advantage of or try to just get a
Mhm.
freebie out of that we really have to navigate our way through.
Well, it's again, it's dicey, right? Because it's such a personal service. And yet,
Mhm.
when I think about it, there's other personal services you can go to and maybe leave not happy. Maybe you get a new hair color and you decide a few days later, I really don't like it. Or,
Mhm.
your nails are done or something like that. And you're like, it wasn't, my favorite length, or something's wrong with this nail, that nail, whatever. And you could go back and they might do a little touch up, or they might be able to do a little color correction or like a short little service. They're not going to do a whole makeover for you for free, but they
Right.
want you to be happy, right? And they want you to come back. It's a little different when you're talking about sex work because you can't refund an insertion of holes. There's just no
Right.
way to unpenetrate or to take back that hand job or like whatever it is. It's kind of more comparable, I guess, to an RMT massage. You just choose not to go see that RMT again, or you
Right.
explain to them why you weren't happy and they hopefully do better the next time. It also depends what your complaint is, right? If it's a personality difference,
Mhm.
it happens, unfortunately. Listen, I've been loyal to the same colorist for X amount of time because his work is amazing and his personality is fantastic. If he
Right.
was a cunt, would I still go see him? Probably for his expertise, but it's not
Right.
invasive in my body. So, like, we got to pick someone we like. It's
Yeah.
just, it's weird. And there's only so much that as owners we can refund. And so I
Right.
feel like on that end, it's a matter of us giving the house portion back, the cover charge, the door fee, whatever you want to call it. The attendant's money, which is hers alone and hers to keep, she's not giving that back. She shouldn't give that back. She got naked, you touched her, there was jizz in places and things and tongues and mouths and fingers. There's no refundability for that.
Well, and
And
I think
yet you want to keep the customer.
Yeah. And I think we should mention generally the rule of thumb is, I mean, there's times where a customer comes in a room and within the first few minutes, they realize it's not a match or he's not going to get expected services from her. And in
Yeah.
which case he can leave, or sorry, she can leave and either suggest someone else or he can just leave and get a refund. But generally, once she's gotten naked and or being touched, there's no refund, at least not on
Yeah.
her end.
Absolutely. At that point, cha-ching, the cash register is closed. And I think it took us a little while to kind of figure that out and like find the right balance that way. And not everything is even a full compensation of our portion.
Right.
Sometimes it's a half situation. It really depends on the nuances of the scenario. Um, but there was a lot of trial and error at the beginning on us trying to figure out, you don't want to give too much away for free. That's a business lesson 101, because you devalue your product or service that you sell. At the
Mhm.
same time, compensating a portion of an expensive service, which sex work is, isn't a full compensation. That can leave somebody with a bit of a distaste in their mouth, or like money wasted, or whatever they might think about it. It makes me want to try harder to be a better matchmaker, and
Right.
for to put that on our managers as well, on us with the recommendations, to really try really hard to make a perfect match or a good match from the get-go, so as to eliminate some of those missteps or mismatches along the way. But
Mhm.
I distinctly remember in our first 6 months or so was the very first time that we got a novel long complaint. I will never forget it as long as I live. This gent still visits the spa. Bless his heart. He scared me, to be honest. He's a booming fellow in person, especially when he's irate. And he emails this. And I just remember thinking it was a transition to get out of my former sex worker mindset and now think sex work business owner mindset.
Right.
And I just remember thinking, why the fuck did we make it possible to email this kind of shit? Because
We
my
are
bosses
too
were very,
accessible.
it's too accessible, right? My bosses were nowhere to be found. People didn't even know their name. They didn't know
Right.
anything about them. Complaints, and they were dudes. So they were like, I don't know. And that was like the
Mhm.
best you got. Like, that sucks. Like, they just didn't care. And here we were being like, we are happy to help all the time. Customer service, la, la. And then I literally was like, oh my God, this is so fucking long. And
Right.
it was over a bath mat. And a bath mat. I got like a 3-page novel. It was like a girlfriend just going off in the paragraphs. And
Right.
I literally was thinking to myself, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, this is insane. I've never heard someone so mad about something. Okay, it was, inconvenient for him or something, but this is also a gent that brings some of his own furniture, and the room has to be arranged ahead of time.
Right.
He doesn't like to see anyone else in the spa, or even have to wait a moment in the lobby. And so the manager has to scramble around and make sure a room's available, get it all ready. Because if he comes in and it's not ready, then he turns into like Oscar the Grouch with a booming voice, and he's very
Right.
like in your face, and it's terrifying to be honest. And again, he emails the same way that he roars. And so there's this like kind of scramble panic when he's coming in, that we want to make him happy. And apparently someone didn't change the bath mat. Is that acceptable? No. Is it kind of icky? Absolutely. Is it worth a 3-page freaking email just laying into me and rip me a new a-hole, called me names, like all the things? No, I thought it was a
No.
little dramatic. I was like, and they say we're functional. But he was very mad. Now we always know, not just with him, but every customer, always make sure there's a fresh bath
Right.
mat out. It slipped someone's mind. Again, 6 months in, we were new. Most employees were our friends anyway, so it was awkward to
Right.
discipline and all of that shit. But oh God, wasn't that the beginning of what it feels like to get a complaint? And so when someone sends in a complaint that's kind of technical like that, I may not enjoy the way it's written, but I can
Right.
receive it. We can correct the error and say, ladies, make sure our bath mat is always changed. That's kind of disgusting, blah, 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 right? But when someone's like, I didn't like her boobs, or her face wasn't what I
Right.
thought, or blah, 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 vagina, I'm just like, I don't know how to apologize for this, because I don't feel I should apologize for her boobs being boobs.
Yeah.
It becomes dicey. And I mean, you get them too, because you deal with the DMs on our social media, and it can be awkward sometimes to
Well,
respond.
I think there's trial and error that you should expect in any business. I mean, you can't go to the movie theater and be like, I want a refund that sucked. Like there's places and times where it's appropriate. And I think that's why we always try to lead with a communication as to
Yeah.
what the expectations are before the session so no one leaves disappointed. Also, with having really kind of true to life photos that aren't too overly edited to avoid
Yeah.
disappointment. But there's times and places. So if it's a reception area or management error that we've double booked someone, of course, why don't you stay with
Absolutely.
Sarah instead and we'll compensate you $20 for your trouble. But if you're walking out of the room saying she didn't suck my dick, well, I'm sorry, sir. I don't ensure that those services happen. You're in the wrong
Right.
establishment. So every situation is just so different, right?
The mileage disappointment refund requests always boggle me a little bit because, listen, sex work still involves consent, and
Yeah.
even an escort does not have to do anything with you. You're paying
Hmm.
her for her time, and whatever happens between that is consenting adults deciding on their own within their own boundaries and comfort. You
Yeah.
cannot be angry that someone doesn't feel comfortable having you in their body. Now, if I was an independent or escort, would I maybe choose to end the session if I don't feel comfortable instead of trying to wiggle around not fucking? That could be very awkward. That
Hmm.
said, if you're indie and you don't work in a brothel, which Canada doesn't have except Edmonton, it's a safety risk. You
Hmm.
can't be like, get the fuck out because he may lose his mind. And then what? Like, these are some of the plights that we kind of quest for when it comes to legality and law reform. Because wouldn't it be nice if a gentleman was nervous to have the police called on him if he assaulted a worker because the worker's uncomfortable and wants to end the service? There's
Hmm.
no other service industry where you can't end something because you're uncomfortable or because you feel your safety's at risk. You could be a plumber and walk out if you feel unsafe, right? You wouldn't be
Hmm.
expected to be on a job site that suddenly you were like, what the hell is this? No, I'm not doing this, without the customer beating you up or robbing you or something, right? Whereas for a sex worker, that is a real everyday threat and happens often in the world. So handling those kinds of things can be really, really dicey. And then I would say add in the layer of enhancing those expectations, perhaps via review boards, which we've talked about on the pod a little bit. If they come in saying, well, so and so said, or I read reviews that you do anal and now you're telling me no, what the fuck, he can get really mad in that circumstance as well, wrongfully so, but that is her choice to consent or to do or to not do, and that's gray area. It's uncomfortable. Does that mean men might spend some money wasted a few times before they find their favorite? Absolutely. But again, I'll go back to, like, I've had shitty hairdressers. I've had
Yeah.
shitty, massages or pedicures or a therapist that I decided isn't good for me or whatever. You can't get that time and money back. It's
Right.
spent. It's so spent. And so the complaints that come in, um, it really is a matter of us, especially if it's something personal, not a clerical error on our end. It really takes a matter of really walking through with the customer. Okay, break this down for me. When you say she gave you attitude, what does that mean? When you say she denied me this, this, and this, walk me through what was said. And
Right.
then spending equal amount of time with the attendant herself to figure out what happened, because he could be lying his ass off. She could be lying her ass off. Like, we've got to find that third side, which is the truth, and then delicately kind of navigate that. And again, it's awkward.
Well,
So
but I think this
awkward.
is the valuable part in the refund experience is that, or
Mhm.
compensating, is that it often is one of the only tools we have to really work with girls post training. Because during that initial training, as we spoke about heavily on the pod, like it's a lot of basics and we're running through a lot of different scenarios. And some gets retained immediately and others just out the window. But it's until you're doing the job that they really get their feet wet, that not everyone's perfect, and especially not on their first day. So
For
it's
sure.
through those complaints that we really learn about the girls of, okay, how could she have handled this better? Or how
Yes.
could we have changed this situation? And so even though there might be a compensation of, giving a discount on his next visit, it's worth the money in the sense that now we can speak with her and have that retraining conversation to get her to the level that we want every muse to be at, really.
Absolutely. It's an opportunity if you make it one,
Mhm.
right? Because we can connect better with the girl. We can also retain that customer
Yeah.
because, let's be real, rub and tugs don't exactly have a good reputation for their customer service levels. It's often a grab and go expectation of how a
Right.
business is run. And I love that we go against that grain. That means we're compensating things sometimes, whereas other spas, my old bosses included, would just kind of shrug and be like, too bad. Tell
Right.
Mark tough titties, right? And just move along. we can now better connect with that customer, obviously through giving a shit, through putting in the
Right.
time and effort to get to the bottom of something, and then being able to go back to him with an offer and finding maybe a new attendant or another try with that attendant, just some way to rejig it. And then he knows we're committed to his happiness and his service
Mm.
levels, so that he knows Muse is a place I can trust. Even if something goes wrong, they will be there
Right.
for me and they'll make sure it's right. And to me, that is top tier. I would
Yeah.
hate for every customer to have to go through that, but I love when a customer can trust that, because that means we've done our due diligence and our job as the owners to back up what we preach and to deliver as best a product as we can, and to make sure that's always kind of pushing forward in terms of better quality, better experience for every gent. Even if he's had great times before, let's make sure every time is perfect for him. And that rapport can't be bought. I think it is absolutely fantastic.
I
It's
agree.
priceless to me. Yeah. But it's always a wonder of people, like, how do you guys handle this stuff? It's, again, it's weird. It's fucking
Well,
weird. Oh, no. Welcome to a special extras. This one, Riley, get this, is a viewer submission. Someone wanted us to see this and react.
I love when viewers send us stuff. Guys, make sure you send to us.
I love it. Send it in the DMs, guys. Let's rock with this one. I'm so gassed.
How many more do you reckon there's behind there? There's a dwarf behind there mixing me a cocktail. I am fucking drunk now. All right. I'm going to tell you a story. This story is very long. The first 3 minutes of this story are very depressing.
Aw.
Hitching up my pants. First 3 minutes of this story are very depressing, but there is a moment where this story takes flight. And you have to hang in there with me until this moment and trust me that the story is going to get good.
Okay.
I grew up at number 3 Turramurra Street. At number 5 was my two best childhood friends, Andrew and Daniel Connor. Daniel was born with a disease called muscular dystrophy. If you don't know what muscular dystrophy is, it's a horrible disease that wastes away at your muscles. It's the same as Lou Gehrig's disease or motor neurone disease, except you're born with it. You get diagnosed when you're about 6 years old, when you're not walking right, and they put you on crutches. By the time you're 10, you're in a wheelchair. By the time you're 20, you're in a completely vegetated state. Most people die before their 25th birthday. Dan's lived to be 33 years old, still alive and kicking.
Oh, bless
Let me
him.
rephrase that. Still alive. He's actually died 7 times in his life and been resuscitated 7. And I once asked him, I said, Dan, what happens after you die? And he said, nothing. So good luck with your religion and your faith. I'll take an actual statistic. Now, his family had since moved to Melbourne. I had moved to Great Britain. I went to do the Melbourne Comedy Festival. This is about a year ago. I hadn't seen him in all that time. His brother Andrew came to see my show, and then Andrew took me to see Dan. And I went in to see him, and I'd never seen anyone live this long with this disease. And he's laying on a bed. His eyelids are a muscle that he can't keep open anymore, and he's just squinting through these little things. And he has a breathing mask on him to keep his lungs working because the lungs are a muscle that he can't keep pumping. He has a heart monitoring machine in case he flatlines in the middle of the night and someone has to resuscitate him. And as soon as I walked in and saw this guy that I used to run around with as a child, I burst into tears.
No.
There's nothing worse you can give anyone in this world than pity, you know? I went in the corridor, I felt like a right prick, and I was fucking wiping my eyes off. And I went back in, and I sat with Dan. His brother Andrew went off to work, and me and Dan chatted for a while. 20 minutes into the conversation, Dan says to me, Jim, I'm 32 years old. I've never been with a woman. Will you take me to a prostitute? And that's where the story picks up, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, baby.
Because I went, fuck yeah! And he went, but don't tell my brother, he wouldn't understand. I said, that's where you're wrong. I have known your brother my entire life. Trust me, he will understand. And against Dan's will, when Andrew came home from work, I pulled Andrew aside and said, Andrew, look, here's the deal. Dan's asked me to take him to a prostitute. I'm going to do it whether you like it or not, but I think as his brother, you should come along and help out. And Andrew went, we're not doing it. And I went, why? And he went, it'll kill him. And I went... He's going to die soon anyway. This is a good way for him to go. Like, sure, we'll have to answer a few questions. And he said, we're not doing it. And I said, why? And he goes, because Mum doesn't like you already. And I went, your mum's never liked me. That's why I'm the right guy to kill your brother. And he said, all right, we'll do it, but he can't have full sex. Full sex will kill him. He can only have a blowjob. And I thought that was fairly reasonable. So we went back in and saw Dan. He was where we left him. And we said, Dan, here's the deal. I know you told me not to tell your brother, but I told your brother, me and him are both going to take you to the knock shop tomorrow, mate. But you can't have full sex. You can only have a blowjob. And Dan went, I want full sex. And his brother Andrew went, Dan, you're in no position to argue with anyone ever. Then Dan reluctantly agreed. Now, prostitution in Australia is legal. So I spent the rest of the afternoon going through the phone book trying to find a brothel with wheelchair access. Best afternoon ever.
Okay, MUSE is wheelchair accessible. Let's go.
Eventually I found one, the biggest brothel in the Southern Hemisphere, the Daily Planet, or as the Australians call it, 4 floors of whores. It's a 24-hour brothel because Australia's a go-ahead country.
Yeah.
So we decided we were going to go early in the morning, like real early, like 6 a.m. We wanted to go when the place was quiet and we weren't going to cause a scene. So we wake him up at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's hard to tell if he's awake. And we get him in his chair. Now, he hasn't got your bog standard fucking wheelchair. He's got one of those big sort of silver-looking things with the truck tyres on it. I think the model's called a Hawking. And
oh, God.
Even though his muscles don't work, they get sore. So this thing can move him from side to side and back to front and even into a full bed. So we get him in the chair, then we order a taxi. And then it's not like you have black cabs out there. It's like a normal car, but they've modified the back to go higher. And they drive him up through the boot. And they strap him in there. And he sits up high with windows all around him like a big retarded Pope.
Oh, my God.
Or as the Catholics would say, the Pope.
Oh, my goodness.
And we drive off to the brothel. Now, when we get to the brothel, it takes 10 minutes to get him off the taxi. I see this as my window of opportunity. So while they're getting him off the taxi, I run into the brothel. Now, there's 2 ways that brothels work. Either the prostitutes will stand in a row in their lingerie and you just pick the one that you want. Or they'll stand around in a bar in evening gowns and high heels and you walk up to the one that you like the look of, chat to her for a bit, act like you've got some type of connection with an Eastern European woman, then take her upstairs and fuck her if you need your life to be this delusional.
Wow.
This is one of these situations. So while they're getting Dan out of the cab, I run into the brothel and go, everyone, quickly, gather round. I haven't got much time. And these 14 bemused hookers shuffle over and I went, look, here's the deal. I have a severely disabled friend with me. If you're not up for it, speak now or forever hold your peace. And one of them went, how bad is he? And I went, pretty fucking bad. And 10 of them said they wouldn't do it. And I said, well, I respect that.
Fair.
But can you please go and hide because I don't want him to be rejected by hookers. And these 10
friends.
girls shuffle away in their evening gowns and their high heels
Oh,
with
God.
gonorrhea falling out of them.
Oh, no.
I am now left with 4 girls, the best looking one by a mile stays. Dan wheels in, looking like Jabba the Hutt, breathing like Darth Vader. 2 of the girls run away, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding, you sluts? I just asked you nicely. So we're now left with 2 girls. The best looking one's there, the other one's a fucking troll. Now, out of respect for the ugly one, I go to Dan, I go, Dan, there's only 2 girls working today, mate.
Oh.
Which one do you want? And he said, the one in the green dress. Now, neither of them had a green dress. I stand up and look at Andrew and went, what the fuck is all this about? And Andrew went, oh yeah, his eyes are fucked as well.
Oh, my God.
Now, it
Poor
turns
guy.
out that Dan's colourblind. It's not part of the condition, it's just unfortunate. So,
Wow.
I sat with the hooker. Now I'm going to pay for everything. Now, the reason I'm going to pay for everything is simple. I told Dan and Andrew that I would pay for everything as long as I got to tell this story to hundreds of thousands of people in the future. And
Fair
they said,
investment.
of course you can, Jim, but be respectful and change our names. Which sounds like the right thing to do now, doesn't it?
He's not.
Now I haven't changed their names. Their names are Andrew and Daniel Connor from St Kilda,
gosh.
Melbourne, Australia.
You're craving something a little extra, aren't you? Subscribe to our Patreon and enjoy the ride.
I feel bad for the guys in some contexts because I call them hunters, but I mean, the guys are going in, they're looking for the perfect girl or the highest mileage or the truest connection, whatever it is they're in search of. You have to go in expecting that there's going to be misses. And unfortunately, in our industry, those aren't necessarily cheap. Like this is,
Right.
you're not just going to buy a $2 cookie and see which cookie shop you like best, right? But
Right.
you have to understand that it's part of the experience and to enjoy those rides till you find the right girl. And sometimes you come out, you know, seeing someone that you didn't think you'd like with the best experience and someone you thought you'd really like, not really enjoying yourself. But I think that's where, especially at MUSE, it boils down to that communication, whether it's with front desk, with your muse before the session, or talking to us first, because the more we can help you find the right muse, the less opportunity there is for disappointment.
100%. It comes back to that rapport, right? And if we're able, help me be a better matchmaker. Like lay
Yeah.
out your expectations as blunt and honest as you can. Like as much as our industry has a lot of secret language and you got to talk in code words, sometimes I'm like, give it to me straight because then I can better make the right recommendation instead of thinking that you meant this when really it meant this to you.
Yeah.
And I don't like that guessing game. And I like to think my matchmaking accuracy is like 90%. So like, help me get to 100. It's like my Uber rating. I want to be a 5-star customer. Even though if you fuck up, I'll be a bitch. At the same time,
Right.
it's got to be rightfully so. And so I think a guy always needs to know not every session's going to be a 10 out of 10.
Right.
There are also clients that don't like a recommendation. They don't even like to book an appointment. They're a walk-in guy. I'm just
Right.
going to wing it, go off vibes when I get there kind of guy. Well, that's awesome. And I honestly feel those guys find their favorite a lot faster than having this mandatory checklist of demands, you know. At the same time, he has to embrace that it might take 3 fuck ups to get to the 4th that blows his mind and changes his world forever. And so that's the cost of doing business. And the good thing about Muse is I think that even if she wasn't your favorite, you're still going to leave being like, that was great. It may not be the best session I ever had until you find like your perfect match, but you're never going to go, that was 5 out of 10. Like you're
Mhm.
literally leaving with at least a quality service altogether. And like you said earlier on, if in the first couple minutes before she gets naked, you're not happy, we're happy to switch for someone else or let you leave or, at that point you'd get a full refund. All you've done is pretty much shower and lay down. So by all means come in and out. But I will say, we've caught a few guys trying to use our shower for free doing that. I'm like, listen, construction feller, go find a gym.
Right.
We do here. We have a guest pass for like shower facilities. Maybe we should. But
Right.
there are definitely dudes that try to milk the system that way, that will claim an appointment's wrongly booked when, I mean, our management systems are down pretty solid. We know who booked it, what time they booked it, et cetera, confirmation calls and all those things. So it's hard to do because we've learned the hard way after double booking some people and fucking up that we can kind of guarantee and eliminate some of those, but there are definitely some scammers that like to try and pull some shit. And the shower guys are funny to me because I'm like, you're already naked, you're already there. She walks in with her titties looking great, and you're like, I gotta go. I was just here for the shampoo.
Terrible.
It's interesting, but I mean, people will try to scam a system if they can here and there, right? A loophole's a loophole. Who knows? But I think we just weed that kind of stuff out. We want, again, every session to be perfect. So the least amount of complaints is always great. And if we can go a month with 0, I'm thrilled. I'd say
Yeah.
in a month we maybe get 1 or 2. It's not often. I think in terms of like comparison to the volume of business we do, that's a very low percentage.
Sure.
And that makes me proud all the time. And when we can resolve it, it makes me proud. But I will say, after talking to the attendant, sometimes you realize he is completely in the wrong. She was
Right.
completely in the right. And that is yet another level of delicate conversation because I don't want to lose him as a customer as long as he didn't break any rules. You can't be violent, you can't be aggressive, all those kind of things. As long as it was some other issue, I'm happy to work with him. But sometimes through that conversation, you learn that he's actually a client that doesn't belong at Muse. And that
Right.
too is very helpful because let's weed that out for everyone involved. Some of our clients like to see a bunch of the girls. So let's not just keep passing him off from girl to girl.
Right.
And then them talking about it being like, oh, God, that guy's awful, blah, blah, blah. And then girls are nervous to go in for a session with him and so on. So sometimes it leads to firing a client. And that is equally awkward and uncomfortable because,
Mhm.
sorry, sir, your naked behavior is not to our level. Like, that's a
Right.
weird convo. But it has to happen sometimes.
Well, and I mean, on the other end of the spectrum, it's happened, not often, but sometimes we even let go of girls. I mean, if
Yes.
consistently the same thing is being said over and over on repeat, we've spoke with said attendant, tried to correct the issue. If you're just ripping off customers, like there is a certain
Yeah.
level of service that is expected. There's some things that is your mileage may vary, but there's expectations that should be met. And if you're consistently not doing your job, then you just simply can't have one. And unfortunately, it does take a little bit of feedback to get to that point, and it only
Mhm.
comes from customers. We're not in there. We
Yeah.
don't have cameras. So until we get that feedback, and in that case, we would always compensate the customer, but it won't
Absolutely.
work both ways.
It does. And you know what? Again, we're so reliant on that customer feedback. And so I so appreciate clients that take the time, even if it's 3 pages about a bath mat. Hindsight teaches you lessons and
Yeah.
humbles my stupid ego. So in hindsight, I'm very glad because someone literally took time out of their day, not just to visit us, but to then follow up, whether it's glowing or not. And it allows us to, I think, be more humble in our overall, interpretation of what a client's experience is like because it's easy to assume it's glamorous and it's sexy and everyone's having fun, but a bad
Right.
day or a bad session is a very different kind of day, right? And we've done a few episodes actually where we talk about guys that give us amazing feedback about how it's changed their lives, how they're overcoming health issues, how they're fixing their marriages, how it's affecting their personal intimacy and really uplifting them, making them refine their confidence and dive into a newly divorced era with more zest or like whatever it is they're in. And without those moments, again, both good and feedback, we wouldn't be able to make those connections or be proud of those stories and even know about them. There was amazing things that happened in the parlors that I worked at that my bosses never knew. There was horrible
Right.
things, some of which they knew if we had to tell them, but some of it was too embarrassing to even say. They were dudes and we knew they didn't care. So like, I'm not going to tell you about the guy that just violently finger bashed me and now I'm bleeding. I'm just going to say I need to go home. Something happened. Like
Yeah.
it changes the communication that we have both with our customers and with our employees, because we can really get personal and it gives us the opportunity to not just show that we care, but to do the care that sometimes our attendants really need. And whether it's a girl that's really not servicing the guys, our job is to care about the client. If it's about the client who's being, abusive or aggressive or, just funky and weird in a session, we can choose then to either help him turn a corner to better behavior, which can be done with the right
Yeah.
conversation, or tell him it's time to find somewhere else to go. And I'm sorry, you're not welcome here. And I think that always will make us a better business, even if it disgruntles a person here or there, because they just listen, we have a vibe. It either fits or it doesn't. And people will find what's best for them. If you need something that's a little more riffraffy and a little grimy, I could recommend a few places. If
Right.
you want somewhere that's a little safer, a little kinder with caring bosses, come work for us. Like it's really that difference. And it allows us to kind of reinforce that every single time. And those moments make me very proud because the girls trust us more, the clients trust us more. In a business that doesn't have much trust and a lot of shadiness, let's be real, sex work can be dicey, unfortunately. So I'm always grateful for those opportunities, even though at first I was like, oh, fuck, if these emails are always going to them.
Well, and I think
God love the furniture guy.
a last note, I think it really speaks volumes to society changing or
Yes.
like stigma changing, because for someone to be able to write into the owners of an adult business with their feedback of their negative sexual experience, kudos to them to be able
Yes.
to not only have like the balls to do so, but actually even have the pathway to do so. Like, I feel
Right.
like that is a new norm. I hope it continues, but I think it's a sign of change, and that's a positive thing.
It really is. I mean, nowadays, I think most people have a throwaway email. Most
Right.
people have a throwaway Reddit account, a Finsta that they use for fake shit. There's a Twitter on the side. You can switch between all the apps accounts. Lord, we know that with all the social media we do. And I think 90% of people have a means to communicate privately without having to use like their work email. Granted, there are some that do that too. And I'm like,
Yep.
okay, Mr. VP of sales of such and such company,
Mhm.
it's in your little signature at the bottom.
Mhm.
And you just emailed straight up about how, you wanted a better hand job or something.
Right.
Kudos. Let's hope you're on the upper echelon so that nobody's checking your email, sir. But that level of
Perfect.
trust you can't buy. And I love that about the relationships that we make. And I'll
Mhm.
say it again, every complaint and every problem is always an opportunity for us to do better and for the client to experience something better the next time, which
Yeah,
I think is perfect.
I agree.
I love this topic. It's always a little weird. Weird is what we do, right?
Hmm.
I love it. I hope it kind of enlightened some people and shared some information that maybe they didn't think about before,
Yeah.
because who sit around and ponders like, I wonder what happens when someone's disappointed at the strip club. But listen, the strip club, you can have a beer and all will be okay.
Right.
Our situation's slightly different than that because there's no substances, but I would assume they get the same amount of complaints as anybody else, right? And so
Mhm.
opening up those channels, knowing that there's, an agency owner, a club owner, a parlor owner that you can actually go to in an environment, in an industry that's very hush hush and you're not supposed to talk about it and blah, 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 makes the best relationships. Naked friends are the best friends. And even a complaint could lead to a lifelong friendship. And I think that is
Very
just awesome.
true.
Wicked. I think that wraps up this one. I'd love to know if guys have more questions. We can always do a follow up on this topic. So drop down in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe. Always join the Patreon. You can find all our social media in the description below as well. And we'll see you next time, guys, on the next episode of MUSE on the Mic.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.